There's actually a long list of pests, and we can't cover them all. But the key thing is to keep a keen eye and keep your plants trimmed. We've gone over all the trimmings, so I'm not going to go back into that. But the pests that evolve themselves in the leaves tend to work themselves from the bottom up, particularly spider mites. They'll start at the bottom, and you'll see evidence on the bottom leaves. You'll see little polka dots on your leaves. Okay? That could be spider mites, it could be thrips. Something's eating your leaves. So you want to cut those leaves off of there, and then you have to deal with some active issue. Now you have to give them something that will actually kill the pests. Okay, so in the case of spider mites, if you see actual evidence, azotrol. Azotrol is a concentrated form of neem oil. You don't have to add any detergent to this. It's already emulsified, and you spray it right on the leaves, and you do it every 4 days on the bottom side of the leaf. Okay? So hopefully you're not fully in the flower. You can spray, do a foliar spray 3 weeks in the flower. Once you start seeing buds like this, you don't want to ever spray your plants. Never. You don't want to spray them if you don't have to. I mean, if you have to, you have to. But you would use that to deal with spider mites. Now, if you have some sort of soil bug, like thrips come from the soil, and you have fungus gnats. We had a problem with fungus gnats in the last grow. When you water your plants or you disturb, you'll see little itty bitty little gnats fly out from there. Okay? The best way to deal with that is that product they have over there in the right. This is completely natural. It contains rosemary and some other herbs. Has a very powerful aroma to it. And you do a light watering of this because the fungus gnats, they go down about 2 or 3 inches.
Okay, so it gets down into the soil.
Yeah, you don't want to feed it all the way through the pot. You just want to get the top 3 inches saturated with this. And you want to do 7 days apart on this one. And you want to give it 2 or 3 of these, and then it'll get rid of your fungus gnats. Okay, so you have that. The other method that you can approach is insect control by insects. You have insects that eat insects. I already mentioned that the Nature's Tea provides nematodes. Well, you can actually buy nematodes by themselves.
Oh, really?
You can buy double death predator nematodes.
What? What is that? What is a double death predator nematode?
Oh, I thought that was funny. It's 2 types of nematodes that one works in the top inch of the soil, the others dwell in the bottom 2 inches of the soil, and they're very active. And you buy them in a little sponge and you feed them to your plants. You can use it outdoors, you can use it indoors. It doesn't matter. It devours anything that's in the soil, but it doesn't devour vegetative matter. It only devours the bugs that are in
Wait,
your
so
soil.
what happens to the nematodes then? Where do
They
go?
just keep.
So they just stay in the soil.
They just stay in the soil and stay alive as long as they've got something to feed on. So, they may die off because there's no food for them, but you have to replenish them by periodically, once a week, give them a Nature's Tea water. Okay? The sea kelp and the mycorrhizae, that's only at transplant time. You can give them worm castings when you transplant. All of those things happen one time, except for the compost tea.
Oh.
And the compost tea, you want to...
There's so much bud, it's just falling out.
It's just falling out. Okay? Humic acid is another. Humic acid helps the population, or micropopulation, survive. And now we're getting to the next item. Carbohydrate additive is very important. Extremely important. Carbohydrate additives add to the health of the plant, add to the disease resistance, add to the pest resistance, and most importantly, they feed your flowers. So you have a larger flower, a larger fruit, a larger sized bud. There's a lot of misconceptions about carbohydrate additives. Most people, in fact, you'll see a popular theory out there is you put molasses into your grow medium or into your soil. Molasses does not feed the plants. Your plants cannot absorb molasses. I've said this before in an earlier video. Simply by the virtue of the fact that molasses is a disaccharide and plants cannot absorb a disaccharide. They can't do it. The molasses does feed the microbes in the soil and makes them more active, so it isn't a bad thing to give your plants. You just don't want to give it a lot of molasses, just a small amount of it, and maybe one time, and that helps your microbes grow, but it does absolutely nothing to help flowering directly.
So the carbohydrate is what's going to help your flowering and your yield.
but it has to be in a form the plants can absorb directly. And plants can absorb oligosaccharides and polysaccharides. Those are the two sugars that the plant can absorb on a cellular level. And there's only one company that I know of that makes a product that provides oligosaccharides and polysaccharides as a bud enhancer and a carbohydrate, and that's Canna Boost.
Okay.
Boost. I've also made my own proprietary product that seems to be working very well, because Boost is actually a fermented molasses. I take molasses, they throw some yeast in there, they throw some enzymes in there, and then they let it sit for 4 months, and then they filter out the alcohol when it's done, and that's what Boost is. That's a lot of work. The method that I've been using, I haven't replaced Boost, I still use it, but as an alternative, I'll use home brewed beer. I'll go to the brew supply, I'll buy 2-row barley malt, USDA certified organic. I'll buy a quart of certified organic molasses, and I'll make a wort. And I'm not going to explain how to make a wort. You basically boil it in a pot. It's a little more involved. Once you boil it in a pot, you get your pH of the solution. It has to be between 4.8 and 5.3, or whatever your brew supplier recommends, because they're both fermentable sugars. The reason I put both of them is molasses is hard to ferment by itself without adding enzymes. The barley provides the enzymes. When you make your wort, the barley provides the enzymes. And you seal that in a brew bucket, a 7-gallon bucket, and you let it brew for 3 weeks, 3-4 weeks, using yeast. You throw a packet of yeast in there before you seal it up, and it'll bubble. You'll know it's working because it'll be bubbling. It's producing carbon dioxide. And after 3 weeks, you've got beer that has no adjuncts in it. But the key thing about home-brewed beer, using the method I just described, is it has both oligosaccharides and polysaccharides. And it has a really nice aroma.
So then you just feed that to the plant?
You feed that to the plants.
And what member does the hops belong to?
That's another thing, is that most people don't realize is that the hops that they put in beer, what plant family does that come from?
I have no idea.
It's part of the cannabis family.
Oh, no way.
Absolutely.
So why is that legal?
And hops are actually a preservative. You could actually throw a little marijuana in your brew at the end and use that instead of the hops. It'd be fine.
Wow.
And the plants would appreciate it. And we're still experimenting with it, but the plants seem to like it. It has a very good aroma, so you can feed it to the plants late in flower and use it as a flush medium, and it's not going to impact a bad aroma on the plants. Unlike the rosemary. Rosemary is very strong. Okay, so if you got soil problems, you don't want to give this to the plant the last week before you harvest them, because it's going to leave that aroma inside the plant.
Okay.
All right, so those are the methods that I use for pest control. The main method is compost tea. Compost tea is going to do a lot of things. It's going to produce a bigger yield, and that's not according to me. There's several university studies. There's a farming collective that's done a study. And the farmers, the commercial farmers that grow corn, that grow grapes, that grow flowers, they use compost tea extensively. And there's a study, if you can find it on the internet, there's several studies on the internet that will show that using compost tea in conjunction with your regular commercial fertilizers and other products will increase your yield by about 30%.
Oh, that's a big difference.
More than you're going to get from carbon dioxide. And you're going to eliminate your pests, and you're going to create a healthier plant and a denser bud, which is what we have right here.
Yeah.
And then at transplant time, you use mycorrhizae. You can use the seed kelp periodically throughout the grow. Use the worm castings once. The humic acid, I use it once or twice a grow. But other than that, if you have an infestation, then you're fighting a war.
Yeah.
The best thing to do, if you do what I've said here, is prevent the war. If you get to where you've got a war, if it's a soil pest, it's SNS 203 or some other soil. There's a bacterium you can add. The bacterium I've used has not worked very good. Azotrol for an active infestation, and neem oil to prevent infestation. You never want to feed neem oil to the soil because it's antibiotic, it's antibacterial, and it will kill all your nematodes.
Okay.
So don't feed that to the soil because because your plants will regret it the very next day.
Oh, that was a lot of good information. Thank you, Doug. You're always full of information.
That's it. I mean, you can go on the internet. There's a company called Bounty, Bountea, and they make your own product where you can make your own compost too.
Cool.
Very inexpensive.
Well, there you go. We've got a beautiful yield, and now you know how.